I want to welcome Abhishek Bhattacharya, who's the CEO and co-founder. As you said, you have other founders of the Impact Wave. Abhishek, welcome to the yellow table, as I call it now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arjun. It's so amazing to be here.
Yeah, SFF is awesome, right? It's like
Yes.
day one, and it's just bustling with people.
It is.
right? So, Abhishek, today's conversation is going to be less about the Impact Wave and more about you, the Abhishek,
Yeah.
the founder, your journey.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a very sort of open-ended question, right? Which is, tell us a little about you. Tell us a little about your journey as a founder.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to know, how did it all begin, right? And then while you're actually giving us this sort of narrative and the story of, you being the founder, talk about a few things that have happened, right? Either positive or challenging, which have sort of shaped you in this sort of version of the founder you are today.
Yeah.
All right. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you. So in a nutshell, as a tagline for me, what I do is I've been a serial FinTech founder over the last.
I like that. Serial
more-
FinTech founder.
Specifically FinTech.
Right?
Yeah,
FinTech,
yeah.
right? That's cool.
Yeah, more than half a decade now. And in addition to that, there's another side of me, which is a very academic side where I write, I publish books, I teach blockchain technology, which is what I've all been about in the last half a decade, and that's what I do largely. As a founder, where I am at in my journey right now, I believe I've always wanted to believe that it's always an inflection point. Maybe this is the third inflection point that I'm having in as many years.
Is this your third
yeah.
startup?
Yeah, this is actually my third. I've done
Okay.
3 startups, and as you mentioned, that how have things shaped up, and whether there have been challenges. I think there have been challenges, 90% of the times, and it takes time to see the first success for any founder. I was listening to the other founder, podcasts you have, the Peak Studio casts as well. Everyone is only talking about challenges, right? Because that's what shapes a founder. And in my journey, over the years, everything, when we become a part of an accelerator, there are so many sessions that happen that, how to deal with co-founders, how to deal with the market, the PMF, product market fit, etc. And I believe that over these years, I faced exactly those number of challenges myself as well. As a founder, what I do is the platform Impact Wave, in a nutshell, is about connecting givers with receivers who are creating massive social impact in Europe specifically. My overall experience over these years have been in the Southeast Asian side, India, then Africa, and then now Europe. Overall, it has circled around social impact, and now using blockchain technology to create that Web 2.5 to achieve those goals. So that has been, what my journey has been. Numerous challenges, I'm sure we'll be picking on that. And yeah.
So
that's how it
actually, it's very interesting, right? You've only been at it for 5 years, right? Which
looks. Just a bit more than that. Yeah,
Okay,
7, 8
6
years. Yeah.
All right, 7, 8 years, right? I'm too old, right? I've done things for longer than that, which I'd
You
rather
have.
not talk about, right?
Yeah.
But I think a couple of questions come to mind, right? Firstly, this is a very accelerated path to be on your third startup.
Yeah.
So firstly, what happened to the first two?
Yeah.
But more importantly, what did the first two teach you
Yeah.
about number three?
Yeah. So one important distinction here is that for those 3 startups, you can count, for example, 11 to 12 years. Why so? Because that was the time when I was in my college, which is when I did my first startup. Immense amount of learning from there. Of course, and I remember in my entire batch of 800 students, we were just 2 entrepreneurs. And we were co-founders, right? So that there was one startup coming out of my batch. And when we shut it down, there were numerous problems. There were some co-founder problems. There was some funding problem, even though within 2 months we were able to raise some funds. So that was my first experience with fundraise, which gradually in my last startup.
But what did that
went,
teach you as a person?
as a person, it taught me that I need to be a better, not just a leader, but maybe I have to understand everyone who's not like me, right? There are so many different characteristics. There are so many different characters in my co-founders, my teammates. We had 37 members, all part of that same college. And that was a big team. And everyone, sported different characteristics. I had to learn that.
I actually do believe, right? And the more I speak to founders like you, I've come to understand that actually the quality of emotional quotient
Yeah,
is nearly as important as intellectual quotient if
it
you
is.
want to be a long-term successful founder.
I have not seen any founder who does not have a very high level of emotional quotient. See, when you connect with really good founders, they why was Jobs so successful, right? He had a huge emotional quotient, right? He was able to drive that. And every founder I'm seeing here, everywhere else I've met, I think they do have a lot of emotional quotient. I don't even think about their IQ. That is said, right? That's given.
Okay,
But
so let's
yeah.
go further in your journey.
Yeah.
Second startup.
Yeah. So after college, and working for a couple of years, then it came around a point again that in entrepreneur, insect in me that found its place again. Did my second startup, this time in blockchain. So that was when I had full-fledged come into blockchain. I had already become an author. I wrote my first book in blockchain. I thought I'm in a very good position to solve problems. We did solve a few problems. Then pandemic hit, and we were in a bit of a rut. And just before that, I had closed. I had to move on, and we had to close that startup. We had to shut that startup, and then on to other, the third startup now and everything. Over these years, the first two have shown me challenges from co-founders, having many co-founders at once, 3, 4, 5 co-founders. My second startup, actually, we were 5 co-founders, so it gave me a very big insight that there is always a sweet number, and that is not 5, right? And then I've seen many people speak about that. So overall, building on top of one and another, right? Then the market, what market should we launch what kind of products in, right? If you're, for example, focusing a very specific category of maybe affluent people looking to do XYZ on a platform, we have to be very careful about what market we choose. Maybe trying to do it in India or Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. These things change, right? Finding the product market fit was very important during those first couple of startups. The third startup, I did see a lot of numbers, a lot of traction. We garnered. We did create a massive impact in the lives of more than 30,000 farmers, more than $600 million in assets, tokenized assets on the blockchain, working with governments and banks in India, which maybe 5 years back was a dream. They would be the first persons to drop off, and got me my biggest recognition of Forbes 30 under 30 Asia. That's biggest in my life, and shaped me up as a person. The person in me really, got a notch higher. What I can do, what I thought technology can create for what kind of population. Now that completely changed, right? So that's
So
overall
let me
what
tell,
built
so
it.
tell me, how did it feel to be called one of the 30 under 30?
So it was 5:30 a.m. in the morning. I remember I am an early riser, 4:30 kind of a guy, and at 5:30 I was doing something. I think I'm not sure. And then the email came, and it was like class of 2022. That was the best thing. I was not this happy when I was a class of something in my college as well, right? So and when I looked at the other kinds of people who have been on that list, I mean that was amazing, right? Even when we talk about, so even I've grown up seeing cricketers such as cricketers in the Indian team. I've seen them on that list. Never thought I would be on that list, right? So it was a big thing, and it did bring in a lot of support with it. Getting access to a lot of communities, people, networks has been easier than what it was before 2022 May. And but it does bring in a lot of people looking at, okay, what are you doing, what are you amounting to, right? So maybe that's going to shape up some of my future, where I amount to eventually 10 years later.
No, so
Let's see.
congratulations to that. I think
Thank
that's
you.
that's a fine accomplishment, and you
Thank you.
should be very proud of it. You mentioned your latest venture is in Europe,
Yeah,
right? Am I correct in assuming you've never lived previously in Europe?
absolutely. Yeah,
You've never lived there.
I have no
Right.
never.
I'm not so bothered about why it's Europe,
Yeah.
right? What I'm actually quite interested to know is that the vast majority of founders like to play in their backyards.
Yeah,
Right. And
absolutely.
there's good sense for that, right?
Yeah.
Um, why would you choose Europe?
Yeah,
Not as a market answer.
No,
But what
not at
went
all.
through a founder's mind?
right. Happenstance. So what happened is that you're right. In the last two startups, it was completely in my backyard. It was India, and that to very specific areas in India where I know the language, I know the people, everything like that. But about this, a very good thing happened is that I found people, again, co-founders, as you mentioned. So I found people who have a lot of experience in Europe. We had a challenge already going on amongst ourselves, which we wanted to solve. I had a complementary set of skill sets which I brought on from my previous experiences, and then we decided that it's fine. We start here because the kind of customer category we're targeting is here, is in Europe. Doesn't matter that every founder needs to be in Europe because it's a very remote world. right? Someone wants to lead a team can do from anywhere, right? We've been doing that since 3 years. So that's how we came together. At first, it didn't have anything to do with the market itself, but definitely the idea is something that, you have to build a product and launch it in Europe. So the population has to be in Europe. But other than that, this founder presence, so I'm the only one operating from Asia. Others are from Europe and especially from Germany. So that's the market we're targeting. And as we do that, we are also building a background in other places, such as where I have experience in, business experience in. So that's how it came out being.
Very interesting. We're short of time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the last question. Don't. It's not a trick question, but
Yeah.
it might not be a very straightforward question. I'm going to ask you, what are, according to you, 3 values, and I
Yeah.
do not mean behaviors,
Yeah.
3 values that you would recommend founders to consider to make a part of their repertoire?
To hone themselves, right?
Yeah.
Hats they have to wear. Yeah. So as a founder, leadership comes first, right? And that's a big value that you need to really focus on. And leadership just does not mean that you're leading a team of 10 that grows to 100, then 500. That's not what it is. What I believe, what I've learned along the way. So just a bit of a snippet. I was a part of. I got some executive coaching from some person in Google for free. We were part of their accelerator. We can't afford that otherwise. During those 6 months, that's when a leader in me got built. And I recognize that there are areas that a founder needs to focus, which they are not aware of since beginning, since just by building a startup, building a product. That's one leadership. Another one I would say is understanding that maybe branching out of leadership is understanding culture, ethics, and people. I did not have that when I was running a startup in India in my college with all Indian team members. But gradually, when I worked with Africans, I worked with people in Europe, Germany, I worked with people in other areas of Southeast Asia, my thought process completely changed. That was needed, right? I think these are 2 very important ones. And the other one is what I think I have is perseverance. It is my 3rd startup. Maybe the next time I get to be on the yellow table, I would say, no, okay, now Arjun, it's my 6th startup. And, I hope that doesn't happen that way. So perseverance is something that if you lose, I've seen so many founders, I've seen myself being in that zone, but happily coming out of it, thankfully. But I think founders will lose it if they are not persevering, if they are not having that mental strength.
Interesting,
That's it, I
Abhishek.
think.
And I think those are good values for any founder to have any time in their sort of path
Yeah.
or their journey. I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
I wish your 3rd startup the
Yeah.
very best. And
Thank
I
you.
hope this is the startup which
Let's hope
sort of
that, yeah.
grows. You want to have 6, you can have 6 too. I'm not
Yeah,
taking the
yeah.
other 3 away from you. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.
Right?
Thank you so much.
And
Amazing.
hopefully we'll get to talk
Absolutely.
and meet again in the future.
Sure.
So with
Thank
that,
you so
I'd
much
like
for
to say
having me.
goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank
goodbye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.